Hello and welcome to our weekly podcast from Granton Parish Church. It's lovely to have you with us today. We hope that you're doing okay. We're praying for you all, and the purpose and aim of this podcast is just to give you a wee word that we can share with you, a word of encouragement, a word of hope at this time. And today, especially because today is Palm Sunday, it's the day when we remember Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem. Now, for years, people have been talking about this. And as long as the Christian church has been around, Christian ministers like me have been thinking, gosh, what are we going to say about it? What can we find to say about this that's new this year? Because it's always good when somebody goes away and they say, wow, I never realised that. Or, gosh, that was a really profound thought that they shared with us today. Sadly, it's not always possible to do that, because the truth of the matter is, what we're talking about is not new. Jesus has been around for 2,000 years. He's been a central part of the civilizations around us for that time. We even measure our time from Jesus coming into this world, the good old AD. And so no, what we have is not new. And what we're doing is not actually trying to find the new angle. What we're doing is trying to find a way of connecting people with Jesus, of helping people to take the next step on their journey with Jesus, of helping people to be encouraged in their faith, and of helping people to know that God loves them. Because we can't gather in the church, and because it in Granton has been our tradition to give people out palm crosses on Palm Sunday, I thought, wouldn't it be great if this year, because we're all at home, if I somehow led the folks in the creation of an origami palm cross. I thought, we can do this. Be fine, be fantastic. And away I went and did a lot of research. And after watching the third video, each one about 20 minutes, I soon came to realise that actually to do this properly probably requires an apprenticeship in origami and 5 years worth of practice. And I was expected to fold this here, to cut that there, to pinch this there. And I have to tell you, by the time the third video had finished, one of the things I came to realise about myself was I would never become a professional at origami. All of the expectations that people were laying on me, they ended up with this fantastic palm cross that they were displaying. I ended up with this frustrating bit of paper that ended up going straight into the bin. And then, of course, I remembered that what God was asking of me was not actually to become proficient at origami. That God, when Jesus was asked, what's the greatest things, what's the two greatest commandments? What did he reply? He said, love God and love your neighbour as yourself. And so these are the expectations that God lays on us. Might not be able to fold paper, that's not what we're called to do, as long as we fulfil what God has called us to do. Now, we live in a world where there are lots of expectations. So right now, of course, the expectation is that you stay 2 meters apart. Good old social distancing, or physical distancing is a better way to put it, not social distancing. That we go out only under specific circumstances. That you wash your hands 20 seconds, sing happy birthday, sing the doxology. There are many things that we can do. And all these expectations are out there. Before this, of course, there were a whole pile of other expectations. There was the expectations of how you dress, how you speak, how you interact socially, how you respond to communication. Huge numbers of expectations are being put on us. And even now, in the midst of this, looking over the news this week, it seems that there's two distinct camps growing around people's expectations. So one group are saying, you know what, see when you're at home, this is the perfect time to take up a new hobby. Why don't you learn a language? Why don't you pick up an instrument? Why don't you do all the things round the house that you never had the chance to do before? And folks are saying, really make the best use of this that you can. And that's one kind of camp. The other camp is saying, you know what? If I'm in my jammies at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and if I'm having a glass of wine just to get through this, just leave me alone, because that's what I'm going to do. Very different ways to look at it, but both of them are still about expectations. What are people expecting of us? We go back to this thing about God. The highest expectation that God puts on us is love God and love your neighbour. And under any circumstances, these are non-negotiable. Whether we are in a coronavirus lockdown, whether we are after this lockdown, these are still the highest expectations that God places on us. Now, interestingly, Palm Sunday was a day when Jesus had to face a whole pile of expectations. Because the people, when he came into the city of Jerusalem, they wanted to make him king. The leaders, the Pharisees, were wondering what was going on here. Their expectations were, is he going to get rid of us and usurp us? So all of these expectations were floating around, and they were floating right on and focused on the person of Jesus. Let me read to you the verses that we find in the Gospel of Matthew. Here they are now, so we'll turn to them now. As Jesus and his disciples approached Jerusalem, they came to Bethphage at the Mount of Olives, and there Jesus sent 2 of the disciples on ahead with these instructions. Go to the village there ahead of you, and at once you will find a donkey tied up with her colt beside her. Untie them and bring them to me. And if anyone says anything, tell him, the master needs them, and then he will let them go at once. This happened in order to make come true what the prophet had said. Tell the city of Zion, look, your king is coming to you. He is humble and rides on a donkey and on a colt, the foal of a donkey. So the disciples went and did what Jesus had told them to do. They brought the donkey and the colt, threw their cloaks over them, and Jesus got on. A large crowd of people spread their cloaks on the road, while others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road. The crowd walking in front of Jesus and those walking behind began to shout, "Praise to David's son! God bless him who comes in the name of the Lord! Praise be to God!" And when Jesus entered Jerusalem, the whole city was thrown into an uproar. "Who is he?" the people asked. "This is the prophet Jesus from Nazareth in Galilee," the crowds answered. Jesus went into the temple and drove out all those who were buying and selling there. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the stools of those who sold pigeons. And he said to them, "It is written in the scriptures that God said, 'My temple will be called a house of prayer,' but you are making it a hideout for thieves." The blind and the crippled came to him in the temple, and he healed them. The chief priests and the teachers of the law became angry when they saw the wonderful things he was doing, and the children shouting in the temple, "Praise to David's son." These are verses 1 to 15 of chapter 21 in Matthew. How could Jesus resist all of the expectations that everyone was putting on him? The expectations of the people, the pilgrims, the Pharisees, even his own disciples. Well, he was clear what were the most important ones, and they were God's. Love God and love your neighbour as yourself. These are the 2 most important commandments. And although we are in the midst of this lockdown, it's good sometimes to say, what expectations do I have of myself? What expectations does society have of me? What expectations might my neighbours on the left or my neighbours on the right have of me? And what expectations does God have of me? Because the highest expectation we're called to as Christians are those of God. Love God and love your neighbour. And so this Palm Sunday, we want to encourage you to think this week, in the midst of everything everybody else is asking you to do, how will you love God? How will you love your neighbour? How will you demonstrate your love of God? And how will you demonstrate your love of your neighbour? We hope and pray once again that you will be safe this week. And we hope and pray that you will continue to look after yourselves. But in the meantime, God bless you all and keep you all safe. Thank you.